You're ready to die for me?
It's the job.
And you do it? Why?
Can't sing.
When a singer is threatened by a dangerous superfan, she hires and then falls for a handsome new bodyguard. This week, we discuss traceable typewriters, Yelp reviews for hitmen, and pooping in Taylor Swift's house. We also reveal the details of Knicks Marathon 2020 before we find out if I will always love you. No, we don't find that out. We just find out if the Bodyguard stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is James Brief, and joining me once again, as always, is my friend Alan Noah.
You don't get to say my name. Only I may say my name. Actually, that's a pretty stupid rule. Anyone can say my name. I don't know where that came from. I immediately take that rule back. How you doing, James?
I'm doing okay. I've actually enjoyed playing the newly released Mario 3D All-Stars on the Switch. That is the re-release of Nintendo 64's Mario 64, GameCube's Super Mario Sunshine, and Nintendo Wii's Super Mario Galaxy.
And it's funny that you bring that up because we are going to be playing a lot of Super Mario games at Knicks Marathon 2020. Yeah, it's back. For anyone who hasn't heard us talk about it before, Knicks Marathon is the charity that James and I run. We raise money in the name of Nick Capabianco, our friend who passed away from leukemia, who loved video games. It's always a fun weekend where we all pack into James's apartment in the city and we play video games and we tell jokes and we eat pizza and Chinese food and every kind of junk food and we have a great time. But there's a pandemic happening. Sorry to break the news to anyone. So we're going to have to do Knicks Marathon a little bit differently this year. We're going to do it remotely. Everyone's going to log in. Our group of friends from New York and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and wherever people are, we're going to log in and play a bunch of Super Mario games and see what we can beat. Which games can we not beat? Who can get higher scores? And it's just going to be a madcap Mario free-for-all. And it's not going to be the same, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and it is going to be fun to kind of have that competitive feature, and it's going to be a real good time. I think, we're going to do what we have to do, but it's going to be fun.
It is. And the event is going to take place this November 20th, 21st, and 22nd. We always start at Friday night around 8 p.m. and then go through 8 p.m. on Sunday. So it's the weekend before Thanksgiving. You can watch it all go down live at knicksmarathon.org, NICKSMARATHON.org. I spell it because sometimes people think I'm talking about like the Knicks, like the basketball team, and that's not right, obviously. And you don't even have to wait until then. You can make a donation if you want to support our cause, or you can buy a very stylish Knicks Marathon face mask. You've already got face masks, of course you do, but hey, why not have this one? It looks really cool, it's washable, it's dual layer, they look great, and all proceeds go to a great cause. So why not get yourself a Knicks Marathon face mask?
And Alan guarantees you will do triple your high score in your best video game or triple your money back.
I am tripling none of those. I triple nothing. Maybe we'll do some triple jumps during Knicks Marathon. I assume we will. But let's talk about The Bodyguard. This is a movie that I know about because I am a human being who was alive in 1992 in the United States of America, but I had never seen this movie. Had you seen it before, James?
Oh, yeah, I've seen this a few times. I don't know whether I watched this in the theater, maybe not, but this seems like the kind of film that, like, when we all visited Grandma's house, Grandma lived in Fort Lauderdale, this is the kind of film that we would rent and, we could all kind of settle on.
And Grandma Brief was a big fan of The Bodyguard?
Oh, Grandma definitely did not watch any of this chazarai with us, as she called it. But for the people that haven't seen it, or for the people that's been a while since you've seen it, this movie is about Rachel Marin, a superstar singer and actress played by Whitney Houston. When a mysterious stalker begins to send Rachel threatening letters in the mail, her team hires former Secret Service agent Frank Farmer, played by Kevin Costner, as her bodyguard. Rachel initially clashes with Frank's strict ways, and Frank resents Rachel's lackadaisical approach to her stalker. And as they spend more time together, things begin to get a little hot and heavy, if you know what I mean. That only complicates matters as Frank races against the clock to identify and stop Rachel's stalker.
Right. Now, I do not need to ask you if this was a big hit when it was released. I know that it was. I didn't really care in 1992. At the age of 13, it didn't really mean that much to me. I know that the soundtrack was a huge smash hit, and sometimes a movie can have a soundtrack that sells pretty well and the movie doesn't do as well, and there's not always a correlation, but I know that the soundtrack was everywhere, and I know that the movie did really well at the box office too.
It was a smash. I mean, this film was made for a modest $25 million budget, and it opened Thanksgiving, November 25th, 1992, and it actually opened at number 3 with a $16 million opening, and this film wound up quadrupling its budget in America by taking in $102 million domestically. This $25 million film made $410 million worldwide.
That is a lot of dollars.
Oh, absolutely. I remember Whitney Houston was a big pop star. And, this film is about a huge, A-list superstar. And I kind of think that this film is almost life imitating art, imitating life. Because I don't think that Whitney Houston was as big as Rachel Marin was when this movie came out. But this film and this soundtrack sold 37 million copies.
Whoa.
And it was the best-selling soundtrack of all time. Yeah, whoa. Can you guess what number 2 was? The biggest movie soundtrack of all time. Kind of is synonymous with a whole era of American music.
Yes, I know my music history. Of course, it's Saturday Night Fever.
Right, and that sold 10 million fewer copies than this. So that song was everywhere, and it was almost like the benchmark of, are you an amazing singer or a good singer? Can you hit that note from I Will Always Love You? That, or some Mariah Carey high note. This song was the kind of thing that, when American Idol was huge and people would try out with this song, they'd be like, man, why'd you even try with this song?
Yeah. I mean, the song was all over radio. Of course, it's a cover of the Dolly Parton song, but really, it's one of those songs that has become more well-known with the cover version. I kind of equate it to All Along the Watchtower. Yeah, that's a Bob Dylan song, but everyone knows it as a Jimi Hendrix song. Or even Hallelujah, everyone knows it as a Jeff Buckley song, even though it's really a Leonard Cohen song. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes where the cover becomes more popular than the original.
I would say it's even more trivia that this is not actually a Whitney Houston original to most people.
But it's a cover even in the movie.
Oh, yeah, you're right. There's a second cover in the film. Yeah, I think it's, another kind of slow country ballad cover of it.
Yes, it's not the Dolly Parton version. It's the John Doe version. I actually like that version, and it's not on Spotify, sadly. I wanted to add that to my playlist. I like the John Doe version.
Yeah. So this film opens, and there's a huge explosion at one of the places where pop star Rachel Marin was supposed to be. And suddenly her team gets freaked out, and it turns out that there's some guy writing letters, stalky letters.
Well, he's not writing the letters.
Oh, yes. It's a very 90s thing where you don't write the ransom letter because by then you had known that typewriters can be traced or something like that.
Can they be?
Yeah, oh yeah. Typewriters could be traced, like the slight imperfections, etc., stuff like that.
I did not know that.
That is why these ransom notes you would see like an A cut out from one magazine article, and then they glue it on and it says like "you will die."
I will never use a typewriter again. I mean that literally. I will never use a typewriter again. Not because it could be traced because I'm sending threatening messages, just because why would I ever use a typewriter? But so there's this mysterious stalker who's threatening Rachel, and her people decide that they need to get some real security. And one of Rachel's people, this guy named Devaney, goes to recruit Frank Farmer, played by Kevin Costner, who we last saw on the podcast as Robin of Locksley. In this movie, thankfully, he is not trying to do any accent of any kind, which is better.
To be clear, if you didn't see the film, Robin of Locksley is Robin Hood. He was in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. And at first, Frank really doesn't want to guard a pop star. There's a big conversation about his salary, and they'll pay him $1,500 a week or $2,000 a week, $2,500 a week. Finally, he agrees to do it for $3,000 a week. And, we've talked about it on the podcast before. Whenever you mention money, sometimes these things sound kind of silly. But I think the fact that they end up at $3,000 a week, that shows that he's serious. That's still a decent amount of money in 2020.
Oh yeah, I mean, you just extrapolate it. Obviously, he's not working for a year round, but I mean, that's $156,000 in a year. If you worked full time for her.
Yeah, which isn't bad. Although, I guess if you figure that you have to put your life on the line, maybe you would ask for more money now. I would think.
And if he works for her 24/7, he lives with her, so he has no, room and board expenses.
That's true. That is a nice perk. But yeah, I mean, Frank goes to Rachel's mansion, and it's a free-for-all. Anyone's allowed in. There's no security at the gate. He's telling people that his name is Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell, and no one stops him. No one says, hey, wait a second, that's not you. He's able to just walk right in, and Devaney is really explaining how dire the situation is. There's a bedroom that's not really where Rachel sleeps. It's more of like a prop room that they set up for a photo shoot, but someone broke into that room and masturbated on the bed, which is horrifying. But apparently no one bothered to tell Rachel this because they don't want to freak her out. They don't want to scare her. And not only would it scare her, but it would also scare her young son, Fletcher.
This is a stupid thing, but I do think this is within the realm of a stupid decision people can make. I don't agree with them doing it, of course, from the audience's point of view. I'm sure something crazy's happened at Taylor Swift's house where someone came in and, used her toilet and pooped there. Maybe, they just say, some intruder came. They don't have to say, and he destroyed your toilet, Taylor. Hey, it might have been one of those things. They didn't know. Also, you have a guy who drops, bombs in toilets after he poops. Now it's relevant.
I don't know where you came up with pooping in Taylor Swift's toilet.
I'm talking about how you always see these people they break into some Kardashian house. It's almost like a Goldilocks thing. They're found sleeping in their bed. You find the same story happening every other year. And it's always odd to me.
I suppose that's a fair point.
They thought this was probably just some nut that came in and maybe you don't tell her she's going to want to move houses, so they didn't tell her. It's a stupid idea, but it's within realm of reason. But then they realize it's serious enough to hire Frank Farmer, which is where I go, okay, now they know this is real.
Right. And Frank decides to lock this place down. He fixes the security cameras and he trims back the trees and he just installs high grade security and real windows, and people need to check in when they get there. He recruits Rachel's driver and gives him a gun and says, you work for me now. And Rachel is used to doing things her way, and she doesn't want this new bodyguard to interrupt her life. But Frank is very much interrupting her life, and she is pissed when she wants to go to brunch with her friends like she does every Sunday. And Frank's like, no, you can't. If you have a stalker and you do something every week, that is the worst thing. Don't have a routine when you have a stalker. Mix things up. Which makes perfect sense. And she's like, I want to see my friends and have brunch with them. And he says, great, have brunch with them on Tuesday. And they're all like, oh, the horror. I mean, it sounds like a really smart idea. And if you're a super rich person, like, yeah, have brunch on Tuesday. Why not?
Tuesday morning brunch. But I will say, when I moved to the city, and I'm sure you experience this too, at least New York City, which has so many people in what's called the service industry, restaurants and the nightlife industry, there's something at least in Manhattan called Industry Night. Do you remember that, Al?
No.
And it was like, I forgot what night it was, but it was like Monday nights are like the craziest nights because that's when all the waiters and waitresses and most of the bartenders are off. Whatever night of the week is, that's the crazy night. And it just reminds me of like Tuesday brunch.
So Frank has completely upended Rachel's life. And there are these other people in Rachel's camp. There's this guy, Cy, and the regular bodyguard, Tony. They really resent Frank because they're trying to help Rachel's career, and they don't really think that they're putting her in danger. They are, but they just want to like help promote her. That's mostly Cy. And they take Rachel out to a club, and Frank wasn't informed, and he's really pissed off, but he goes with her, and he feels that this is a terrible mistake. His gut is telling him that this stalker is there. He doesn't know it for sure. We, the audience, don't know who the stalker is at this point, but he has a bad feeling about it. He's making her nervous. She's on stage, and there's some kind of riot that breaks out. I like rewound it to see exactly how it started. I wasn't 1,000% clear on what exactly happened. If it was just like she invited someone on stage to dance with her and then everyone jumped on stage with her and things just escalated really quickly. It wasn't like a very clear progression of A to B to C. Although I guess maybe that is what happens in an actual riot.
I think that's exactly what happened. She invited people up, and then, this is not like 50,000 people at Madison Square Garden. This was, a couple hundred people in a club, and I think they were just kind of dancing on top of each other. It was hard to really see what was going on, but Frank, he charges in, and he basically elbows people out of the way, and he gets her out of the way, and that's where you get this poster, that iconic The Bodyguard poster where he's holding her and cradling her, and he carries her out of the crowd.
Fun fact about that poster, that's not Whitney Houston. That's her body double.
Really?
According to IMDb trivia, which I am proclaiming as fact, yeah, apparently she was sick that day and they used the body double and it was a great shot, so it ended up on the poster. But yeah, not really Whitney Houston that Kevin Costner is carrying there.
That's really interesting because, on that poster, she's kind of hiding her face in his shoulder. Like she's, she really needs him to, and that works so well because
Indeed.
Obviously you want to hide the fact that it's not Whitney Houston, but, Costner is holding her. Yeah, that worked out well.
Indeed.
That outfit she's wearing, that's a fantastic outfit she's wearing. And I don't usually notice these things, but I was like, it looked like, a real 90s video.
Yeah, and there's a moment, I think later in the movie, where Frank is watching one of Rachel's videos, and it was such like a cheesy, like sky weather effect, like a video effect. And I was like, this better not be part of the actual movie, because this looks like a hokey music video. And there was like, oh, no, he is watching a hokey music video, so it's fine. But after this club riot, Tony attacks Frank, and it's kind of funny, this scene, because Tony is this big hulking bodyguard, and he is not messing around. He like goes after Frank. He even picks up a knife at one point, and Frank just completely disarms him effortlessly. He keeps turning his back on Tony, which has to be like a sign of incredible disrespect, of like, I don't even take you seriously enough to look at you, even when I know you're going to come at me again.
It's incredibly badass in a show of force that he's turning his back. However, my guess is that as he's turning his back, he's watching a window or the reflection of something, or it's a little bit superhero-ish, but, it's the kind of Liam Neeson in Taken. You just kind of accept that these guys have these skills. And, I like this scene because Tony, he's not a bad guy, but you got to imagine that, his job before this was probably bouncer at, some bar. He looks the part, and he's got this great gig. You can even see in one scene in Miami and other scenes, he likes being Rachel Marin's bodyguard, muscle guy, and he's surrounded by these women, and women seem to like him. He has a real easy thing going. He doesn't really need to be doing this whole thing, and Frank is really messing everything up here. So I like that there was a showdown, and then I also like that the second that Frank asserted his dominance by throwing the dagger within an inch of his life, showing I could have thrown that anywhere I wanted to, Tony is immediately loyal to Frank, and it's pretty cool.
Right. And then Frank says, I don't want to have this conversation again. They didn't say anything, but they had a conversation. And that is a good badass line.
Yeah, that is.
And also, while all of this is happening, Frank is trying to figure out who the stalker is. We don't get many glimpses at first. Then we kind of see that it's this guy with long blonde hair. I immediately suspected the sister because Frank has a conversation with her. He sees a picture on the wall where the sister used to play in a band, but then they invited Rachel into the band, and then Rachel became the superstar, and now the sister is Rachel's assistant. I mean, it's very clear that there is a motivation that she is jealous. And then you see that the stalker is a Caucasian man, not this black woman. And you're supposed to be like, okay, I guess she's not the suspect. But I pretty quickly was like, I still have a feeling that she's involved somehow.
I really like this because something that inherently is the problem with all mystery films, all mystery novels, any Agatha Christie, in reality, a detective's suspect book is the entire world. But for us, it really is the 6 characters that you've met so far that are not the murder victim. It's not likely the end it's going to be someone you've never met, never referenced, and no one's ever heard of. So I really like that this film throws you a red herring and kind of a fake out. And the guy looks the part. He's creepy. We're a year or two out from Silence of the Lambs, and they kind of focused on Buffalo Bill like this. You're really tuned in like, oh, this is the creep. And this is who we're going to have a showdown with at the end of this film.
Yeah. But then Frank and Rachel start dating. Rachel asks him out. They go and see a samurai movie, which I saw on the IMDb trivia is a movie called Yojimbo, which in English was translated to The Bodyguard. Interesting. Then they end up at like the honky tonk bar, and that's when they dance to the John Doe version of I Will Always Love You. And she's like, boy, this song's really depressing if you ever listen to it. Then they go home together. She checks out his samurai sword, which is so sharp it can cut silk just by like throwing the silk into the air, and then it falls down onto the sword. That's pretty sharp.
Yeah, just the gravity of it. If this had been on Venus, it would have fallen with 26 times the pressure of it. I mean, it still would have cut it.
So they sleep together. But then in the morning, Frank has this idea that, no, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I can't protect you this way. And now they're still working together, but they kind of hate each other. And she's really pissed off. It's the most cliche, hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned thing that you could imagine. She was scorned. She's pissed.
Well, Frank realizes he's crossed a line, and he really shouldn't have done that. So it's really ruined the relationship they've had as, protector and, protectee. Things go down and continue like that when they go down to Miami. And when they go down there, she's having this big Miami apartment party. And, Frank doesn't like that everyone's there, but, he's checking everyone out. And this is what I was talking about before. You see Tony. He's having a good time. He's got some nice girl on his lap. And suddenly Frank bumps into an old Secret Service buddy of his named Portman.
Right. And Portman is there to protect the governor because this event that Rachel's having, it's a fundraiser. It's an AIDS fundraiser. Actually, I think they say that she's there for 2 AIDS fundraisers, which is like, wait, there's 2 AIDS fundraisers at the same hotel within 2 nights of each other? That's a little bit weird, but I guess fundraising's a good thing, so whatever.
And it also was the early 90s. So actually, I really do think there's going to be 2 AIDS fundraisers in the 90s in Miami on a weekend.
Okay, fine. It's not ever established that it's a weekend, but all right, whatever.
That's true. It's not established. It's a weekend. I take that back.
It could be a Tuesday and they just had brunch, for all we know. But yeah, this guy Portman, he makes a move on Rachel. Rachel's happy to take Portman into her bedroom, trying to make Frank jealous. But Portman is very aggressive towards Rachel. I was afraid that we were going to have a rape scene like we had in last week's movie, Showgirls. But then Rachel's able to just kind of push him off and say, hey, Tony, Mr. Portman here was just leaving. And then Tony grabs Portman and gets rid of him. Then you have this really weird scene where Frank is apparently jealous and he goes down into like the kitchen and beats up some random guy who's sitting there smoking a cigarette. And it's supposed to show you that he's unhinged and he's not thinking right. But all I could think was that Frank is just an absolute fucking sadist at this point.
I mean, he was just a guy that's really pissed off and he was looking for someone to break one of his stupid rules. And, he took it on the first guy that he sees. He obviously knows he's a huge asshole. And, it's a flaw of this character. And, I think that's fair to say. Yeah, he totally flipped out here. And Frank is kind of done with this. He's saying that, Rachel's not following his rules and he's kind of going out of control. He's saying stuff like, usually the people that hire me don't have to be convinced to save their own lives because, Rachel just wants to kind of do everything that she's been doing, but just not get stalked. And Frank is saying that you can't do that. So Rachel gets a phone call and she thinks it's her son Fletcher, but it's the stalker.
Right. And he's very creepy. She says it's not what he says, but how he says it. It really freaks her out. And Frank's like, okay, if you want me to stay, you got to do things my way. We're canceling the tour. We're getting rid of Cy and Tony. We're just going up to somewhere secluded. And Rachel's like, okay. Fine. She agrees with it. Then they go to this cabin in the middle of the woods and we meet Frank's father. We do get some backstory here about Frank, which had been kind of coming in little drips and drabs. We knew that he was in the Secret Service. We knew that he was protecting Presidents Carter and Reagan. And while Frank's father is talking to Rachel, we find out that the big secret in Frank's backstory is that Frank wasn't there the day that Reagan was shot because he was at his mom's funeral, and Frank never forgave himself for it. This is a really stupid backstory on 17 different levels. Like, he took a day off from work to be at his mother's funeral. 1, that's a hell of a good reason to miss a day of work. 2, Reagan was fine. So, why is this the defining moment of his character?
Well, someone was killed, Al, and another person was paralyzed.
Okay, but does he say that? Does the father say that? Is that what's really bothering him?
No, but what I will say that's, I don't know if I would say stupid about this plot, but this Kevin Costner character, he's too young to be a Vietnam vet. The only thing that a person that, is in his mid-30s in the 90s would kind of have a shot of having been involved with in a real-life event in the 80s is really, Reagan getting shot. This is only going to be a plot line of a film that is written and filmed in the mid-90s.
But it's also stupid because this movie is fiction. So just make up some senator that, Frank was supposed to protect Senator Johnson and he didn't. And Senator Johnson and his wife and kids were all killed or something. Make up something. You can do that and make a more interesting backstory other than he wasn't at work one day and the president was shot, but he was fine. And that means that Frank can still be a bodyguard, but he can't stay with any one client for too long because he has a work fear of commitment. What?
I think the plot line of the Reagan Secret Service mistake, I think that's fine for this because of the era of the film. But I agree with you that I don't think they quite tie in to how that is a failure for his character. You know, maybe they could have said, like, he was friends with Brady, and when Brady was paralyzed, he never forgave himself, and, you know, just something like that. Like, not being there is not really the failure, you know?
Yeah.
But I get what they're trying to do. Like, he shouldn't have any personal connection because if he didn't take off the time for his emotions, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it was quite there. I think you could have written a better connection. I agree with you there.
Yes. Also, while they're in the cabin, at one point, Rachel's sister, she comes on to Frank, and Frank rebuffs her. Annie gets drunk the next night and confesses to Frank that she hired somebody to kill her sister. She doesn't know who it is, but it's all paid for. The reason why she confesses that is because earlier in the day, Rachel's son Fletcher got in a boat, and Frank dove in the water and tackled him and got him out of the boat. And everyone was like, Frank, you're crazy. You're overreacting. But then the boat blew up. Yes, exactly. And Annie was saying, I wanted to kill my sister, but I would never hurt the baby. I thought it was a little weird that she was referring to her nephew as the baby. He's clearly, I don't know, teens, not a baby. So Annie is shaken up. She confesses. Then the hitman appears, starts shooting, kills Annie, which, hey, whatever. Now we know she was behind the plot. No one's really all that sad for her. I mean, the characters are, but we, the audience, aren't. Frank chases the gunman into the woods. He shoots at him, but he misses.
He has a cool part there where he basically demonstrates, which will be important later, he is a fantastic shot. It's nighttime and there's some moonlight, but, you know, this guy's running in the woods. You can't see anything going on. So Frank closes his eyes and he just listens for like a twig. And whenever the intruder steps on a twig, Frank fires and almost hits him like twice just by sound. So I thought it was a cool scene.
Yeah, it is cool, but ultimately the shooter gets away. Also, Frank's been talking with his old Secret Service buddies this whole time, and it turns out that while this shooting was happening, they arrested the guy who was sending the letters. He was in police custody in LA. I think it's LA. It doesn't matter. But he wasn't in the middle of the woods firing a gun, killing Annie and trying to kill Rachel. So now there's the stalker with the letter guy. There's the sister who arranged for the hitman and a real hitman. Annie's dead. The suspect is in custody, but who is the mystery killer? We don't know yet. And Rachel, despite the fact that she doesn't know, wants to go to the Oscars because she's nominated for a movie and it's a really big deal. She doesn't want to live her life in fear, so she decides she's going to go. And hey, Frank will be there to protect her, so she has nothing to worry about anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she's nominated for Best Actress, so, you know, she's peaking right now. So she decides to go, and, you know, it's actually a fun Hollywood scene because I have no idea what the Oscars are like behind the stage, and I have no idea if this is accurate or not, but I like to imagine it sort of is, sort of like an organized chaos. Al, in all of your times, did you ever get to go to any award show or hear any, like, stories about these award shows? Are they totally chaos?
I mean, I've definitely never been to the Oscars or the Emmys or any of the big ones. I was at like a couple of minor VH1 award shows.
Any of your friends cover the VMAs when you were at Viacom?
Yeah. I know people who went to those things, like, you know, worked the red carpets or behind the scenes. I never did, so I don't have any real firsthand stories. Sorry. I could make something up.
Tell me what Halsey is like.
She's nice?
I knew it.
There's a great early 90s cameo there with Robert Wool. He's playing the host of the Oscars. I think most people probably know him best as Arliss. He was in 1989's Batman, a movie that we've reviewed. I don't know if he's popped up in anything else we've talked about.
No, this guy's popped up in stuff here and there, but I think he's supposed to play a Billy Crystal type character.
Yes.
Because later there's a guy that comes down, his name is like Tom Winston, and he looks like Tom Cruise. It's kind of a fun stand-in for 90s Oscars. But I do like that they don't mention any real names because they don't even say, hey, Jack, you know, because that would be outdated today as well.
There is a Debbie Reynolds cameo in the movie. She is playing herself. I think she has like one line or something. But while Frank is there, he bumps into his old buddy Portman, and Portman says that he's there to protect the host, Robert Wool. And then Frank seems to know that the real killer is there, and he's going to make this move in front of all these people. We're not really sure why, because if Annie paid for the hitman to kill this woman, and Annie's dead, and the job's already been paid in full, one, does he still even have to kill her? Two, if he does for some code or he's going to get more money or he just wants to, why does he have to do it in front of all these people? It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, it does seem like you'd pay half up front and half when the job is done. Something like that. Otherwise, it'd be like, thank you, and you just don't kill anyone. I know your Yelp reputation would go down as a hitman, but, you'd still keep all that money.
Exactly. But Frank is really weirded out. He's really sure that the killer is there. Rachel goes on stage to present an award, and she's freaked out, but nothing happens. But then later, she's nominated for Best Actress, and when she wins, Frank is freaking out. He wants to be there. He wants to protect her. Then he sees there's some guy off to the side with the camera, and he shouldn't be there, and he sends Tony to investigate. But then Tony doesn't come back because that guy is, dun dun dun, Portman. He attacks Tony, pokes him in the eye, and he is going into the audience to get a shot at Rachel after she wins the award. Which then I was also thinking, well, what happened if she didn't win the award? Would he still kill her when the cameras weren't on her? Because is that his plan? He has to do it on camera for some reason? I was not clear on what this guy's plan really was.
Maybe he really guards someone at PricewaterhouseCoopers, so he has access to the winner's envelopes, and he knew Rachel was going to win, therefore he'd have a clear shot.
Maybe. Okay, fine. Let's go with that. And while Rachel is walking onto stage to accept her award, Frank sees Portman with the gun. The gun is like part of the camera or disguised as the camera. And Frank leaps in front of Rachel. He takes the bullet for her. There's chaos. There's people shouting. Even though he's shot, he's able to shoot Portman, kills him dead, and he collapses. And I thought this was it. This was the moment where Frank has come full circle. He's taken a bullet for Rachel. He protected her. That was his job. He died protecting her.
Hero's journey comes to an end. Yep, that's what you think.
Exactly. But no, then there's like this epilogue where he's fine and he just like quits and puts some other old bodyguard in charge, says goodbye. She starts singing I Will Always Love You. And then we see Frank protecting some government guy, I guess. And then it just ends. And I was like, wait. He doesn't die? I mean, I don't want to root for the death of anybody, even a fictional character, but I just don't understand how the movie ends with him living. I also thought that I had heard somebody tell me that he died in this movie, like from way back in the early 90s. Clearly, either I heard that wrong or misremembered or somebody misinformed me, but I was just shocked that he lived.
I'm not shocked that he lived. I'm fine with him living. I like that he saves Rachel Marin. I like that little epilogue. It's a year later. Frank's put what's obviously some colleague of his he knew 10, 15 years ago when he was Secret Service. This guy's older. Yeah, he's, late 50s, early 60s or something. But this guy knows what he's doing. And there's no active threat against Rachel right now. So this guy can do what he needs to do. And there's this fantastic, I think you call it a track shot, when the shot just kind of circles around them. It's on like railroad tracks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there's a really good track shot of the two of them kissing, and it goes to, Whitney Houston's song, and it's really nice. And I think that's where the movie should end. And almost because there's the famous, high note that she gets in this song, and it doesn't kind of come for another like 60 seconds. So they kind of have a really weird, pointless final scene, which is that Frank is back to bodyguarding. Maybe you could have done like Rachel's on her own and she's with Fletcher, and then you also see Frank bodyguarding, like, oh, Frank's alive. Huh, interesting. But you already know he's alive. I just thought it was a weird final scene. So wait, are they together, or did he just kiss her and then it's goodbye, and then now he just works for another politician?
I think that's the implication. I think it is implied that they are not together, hence her singing I Will Always Love You as like this goodbye song. But why? Do they love each other? I mean, maybe if he lives, it could have been that, well, he can't protect her and be with her, so he's not going to protect her, but they're going to be together. Oh, happy ending. You know, like there's no reason for him to be alive and them not to be together and for him to have this other job. It just doesn't track. Like, what's his arc? Where does his arc go? Nowhere.
I guess talking about the end of the film here, what do you think about 1992's The Bodyguard? Do you think it stands the test of time?
So I mentioned how I had been falsely spoiled that Frank dies at the end. I also, for some reason, had it in my head that this movie was a big Oscar winner, that it was an awards darling movie. That is not true. Critics panned it. It won a ton of Razzies, like last week's movie, Showgirls. It was not beloved, and I can kind of see why. Kevin Costner in this movie is fine. Whitney Houston is an unbelievable singer. I should say was an unbelievable singer. Tragically died way too young. But she could sing, man. She could belt out those notes. As an actress, like in some scenes she's better than others. I actually thought as the movie went on she got a little bit better as an actor, which you couldn't even say, you know, just while they were filming she got better, because I'm sure it was filmed out of sequence. But she's not great. There's a lot of cheesy dialogue. The plot really has just some gaping holes. Who was the stalker? Was the stalker guy always sending her those letters and it was completely unrelated to the hitman? Was the hitman always Portman, or did Portman just decide that he wanted to kill Rachel after she prevented him from raping her? I don't understand his motivation. He just kind of comes out of nowhere and then is gone. Frank has no character arc because we don't really understand his backstory, and then he ends up exactly where he started. Rachel doesn't really have much of an arc either. It's just a bunch of stuff that happens. We didn't talk about it. This movie was written by Lawrence Kasdan. He wrote The Empire Strikes Back. That guy knows how to write a movie. This is a very poorly scripted movie, and I really was just shocked and like weirdly dismayed by the ending. And I realize it sounds a little messed up to be like, I was mad that the main character lived. Like, that's kind of a weird sentence, but just for the story, it would have made so much more sense. I think this movie does not stand the test of time. You know, the soundtrack, I guess, does, although there are some clunkers on that soundtrack. That Aaron Neville song, oof. But all the Whitney Houston songs on there, those are great songs. What do you think, James? Do you think The Bodyguard stands the test of time?
You know, I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. Again, I'm not as mad at the ending. I think it's fine that he lived. You know, he could have died, he could have lived, but I thought it was fine. I don't like that final epilogue, but mid-90s Kevin Costner, I mean, he was the movie star. First, he's a Civil War lieutenant, and then he's a Secret Service agent, then he's Robin Hood, then he's a futuristic half-man, half-fish. You know, I mean, this guy did every single genre, post-apocalyptic, historical, and he just did everything. He's a lot of fun to watch, and I think he's a very good actor. And I wouldn't say he's the best actor, but I think he's very good at what he does. I think Whitney Houston, actually, I disagree. I think she was perfectly fine in this film. I think the soundtrack, at least, I don't know about the actual, like, the CD that you could buy, but the music in this movie, I think is fantastic. I think Queen of the Night is a lot of fun. I didn't really even remember that was her. But I gotta say, I think the movie stands up.
Really?
Yeah, I agree with all the clunkers that you're saying. The last final shot of the film turned me off of it, but minus that last shot, I like it a lot more. And I'm gonna say the film stands up, but it doesn't mean that I love the film. But Whitney Houston does fine. Kevin Costner is very good. The action's good. The sets are fun. It might be a little bit too long, I think we should also say.
Yes, I would agree with that.
They need to cut the first half of the film. Second half is fine. The Winter Cabin is really fun. The Oscars is fun.
And the Winter Cabin, they could have cut that down.
You're right. They could have cut a couple minutes from that, too. I think they could have made this film an hour and 45 minutes, and it would have been a lot tighter. But that being said, it's a competent film. I say it stands up. It could be a fun date night film, and it's an film, but for me, it just tips the scale to stand the test of time.
All right. Well, I disagree, but that's okay.
Well, they're going to remake this film at some point. They will. So let's see what they change.
I guess.
I'll bet you within 5 years, if we're still doing this podcast, they will have at least announced. There will be an article from a reputable website or a trade that says that they're remaking The Bodyguard. Would you agree to that, or do you want to bet?
Sure. What are we betting? I'll bet you 2 slices of pizza and a Coke.
We'll bet the loser donates $10 to Nick's Marathon.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to come back with another movie that I've never seen. It's called Flight of the Phoenix. You pick this one, which makes me nervous.
Yeah, usually films that you've never seen, likey. So, we'll see. This came and went from the box office. Nobody saw it when it came out in 2004. It kind of came up on HBO Max, and I said, hey, let's check it out. Let's see if this film holds up. Let's see. You don't want to miss that episode, probably. So, follow us on all of your podcast providers, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon. We're on Amazon Music now. Did you see that? That's pretty cool. Yeah, we're everywhere. Talk to us on social media. We are at Test of Time Pod. We love hearing from you. And we'll see you next week, everybody. Bye.